Okay, station ending in 2 Delta. Go ahead and make your call, sir.
Yes, this is Whiskey Uniform 2 Delta. It's Mike in Manchester, New Hampshire. I wonder if Aaron can still do one more. VK2 Oscar November from Whiskey United 2 Delta.
You want to do it again, VK2 Oscar November?
VK2 Oscar November from Whiskey Uniform 2 Delta. Whiskey Uniform 2 Delta on the FT101 barefoot.
Yeah, okay, Whiskey Uniform 2 Delta. Is that right? Is that right, Michael Ever?
That's correct. Whiskey Uniform 2 Delta. I'm on an FT101 early model barefoot here in New Hampshire. Here in New Hampshire, you're 58 here in New Hampshire. Over.
I think I got a 58 from you. 58. You are 5 and 2. 52. Over.
Roger, Aaron, and sorry about that. We're using a vintage radio here, the FT101. FT101 straight barefoot into a single loop. 73s, and thanks for the nice report. And we'll try to get a little more power on here next time. VK2 Oscar November from Whiskey United 2 Delta.
Yeah, good on you, Michael. No problem. I'm reading on my display 14237. 0.87. 14237.87. That gives you an indication how far I think I need to be to bring you into what I think you would sound like, Michael.
Roger, Roger. And of course, this is an analog radio with an analog dial, so it has to be tuned a little bit closer. 73s, Aaron. VK2 Oscar November from Whiskey Uniform 2 Delta.
Fine business, Michael. You're about 130 hertz slow, no problem. All right, gentlemen, I'm going to pull the pin. 7-3, all the best. Back to you, Gary.
Okay, you guys are always whipped up about what kind of antenna, to talk to Australia. It's a triangle. It comes across to here, and then it goes right up to this apex where the feed is. And then it comes down again to here. So it's a triangle antenna, top fed. So it's an inverted delta loop, a single loop, vertically oriented, fed at the top. Okay, that's what I was using on 20 meters to talk to Australia at around 8 o'clock in the morning. So you might be asking, what more is there to talk about with the FT101? I've kind of gone through a lot of the parts of the radio, and well, I think that people are interested in knowing exactly how each type of 6146, performed in the radio. So I've developed a chart showing the output power on each band for each type of tube. It's not exhaustive, but it covers the basics. Also, I didn't mean to say that you can't bend the rules with 6146s. You can certainly have matched pairs that are not the same brand. Remember, the tubes were developed to a specification that holds for all of the tubes, including the capacitances, the inner electrode capacitances. In fact, this pair of 6146Ws in this radio are mismatched. I think it's a Raytheon and a GE pair, and they neutralize just fine, and it works okay. I did want to try one more little stupid trick with the radio. Now that we kind of know what kind of power it puts out, I would like to tune it up on 10 meters into a dummy load, flip it over, and change the tap from the 117 to the 110. And I goose the voltage a little bit on the plate. Of course, this is going to bring the driver voltages up a little bit. It will not influence the screen because that's regulated. It should not influence the 6-volt regulator. We'd have to check and see if something changed there. Perhaps the emissions will increase a little bit because of the higher filament. Maybe the resting current might be affected somehow for Class AB1. But I would like to at least give you that number just so you could say, aha, if I do something like that, I'm only going to get this much more. So I do want to take that chance and move the tap temporarily, and I'll just let you see what that does. I will return it, however, to the higher voltage tap where it belongs, and the 117 tap is really the place you should run it in this country with our higher voltages that we have nowadays. I was thinking about the Australian contact I just made. He complained that I was off about 130 or 140 hertz. That's pretty normal for these radios. But I did flip the radio up, and I looked at the difference between the transmit and the receive bias on the VCO. And sure enough, they were different. So in all the time I've been fiddling with this radio, I have not gone back and done the basic alignment that included setting the clarifier and the receiver on the same exact frequency as the transmitter. So I went back and corrected that, and now it transmits and receives on the same frequency, or close enough. But this is what you're going to run into with these old radios. When you're talking to brand new radios that can measure down to the fraction of a hertz, they're going to notice 100 hertz off, and they're going to comment on 100 hertz off. Didn't have that in the old days where we were chasing people around and didn't care if they sounded a little bit like Daffy Duck. Anyway, this is the final installment, and this is the 6146 upgrade for the FT101. So just a quick word about driver tubes. You might know that originally the 5763 beam power tube was the one that RCA was promoting to be the driver for the 6146. Shortly after that, the 6CL6 television tube was put into service, and that is in a lot of ham radio rigs from the late 50s and early 60s, including the Heath Marauder and many other radios. When it comes to 12 volts, the 12BY7 showed up, and it became the kind of the go-to driver for a pair of 6146s. Now, the militarized version of the 12BY7 is the 7054, and that's kind of a secret under-the-rug tube that some of the guys use as drivers to get a little more pep in their transmitter. Also, you might know about this tube on the far right. This is the 12GN7. The 12GN7 is like a super BY7. It has a lot more transconductance than the 12BY7, but it also has more capacitance. So if you stick that GN7 in any of these radios as a driver, you have to retune the driver section. So you would have to go back and retune all of the trimmers as well as that new 10-meter trimmer if you want to use a 12GN7. But that is another secret trick driver tube. So that's all I'm going to say about drivers. They're all in the same kind of class. They're mostly 3 to 5 watt dissipation tubes, and some are better than others, but all are plenty capable of putting enough grid current into a pair of 6146s. Okay, this is 10 meters. I'm just below 100, 28,100. Let's just key this up. Looks like I'm getting about 90, 95 watts out. Let's change the tap, and let's see if this guy does a little bit better on 10 meters. Okay, the tap is changed, and I would expect a little more voltage on the plate, so there should be a little bit more output. But this is 10 meters. I haven't changed anything or tuned anything. If there's a change, I don't see much. It's just about the same, 95 watts out. Panel lamps are a little brighter, but that's about the only thing I notice. So it did not show itself on 10. Let's take it down to a different band. Let's try 40 meters. Okay, 40 meters. This is the regular 117 tap. Okay, just about 100 on the nose. Okay, now on 40 meters. Oh yeah. Seeing more output on 40. It's 115 maybe? So it did help 40, but really didn't do much for 10. So the extra 5 or 7 watts that it gives you at the lower bands, probably not worth stressing the transformer. But just for fun, I'm going to put the tap back on and we'll recheck 40. You know, it might have helped 10 watts, maybe 10 more watts on the tap on 40 meters, but it did not help 10 meters. I'm looking at one of the tubes out of the FT101. This Precision 912 tube tester is probably before the 6146 even existed, but this beautiful chart was published. Wayne Hurdle, April 2003, and he includes the 6146 and a lot of other data for these classic tube testers. So let's check this guy out. Okay, this guy's reading good. A 70 on the meter. Let's do this mate. Again, this is the RCA pair that I picked up on eBay. These don't light up very bright, by the way, compared to other brands. Okay, it's pretty close to the same, just a little bit less than the other one. Okay, I can believe they're matched. So here's a random RCA out of my used stash. Same markings as those two, by the way. This guy's hitting 70. He's actually probably a better match than the other one was. That's a good tube. Here's a Sylvania out of my stash. Let's put that in. Let that warm up. Almost identical. That's a 70 as well. So that might be a good one to match with that other one. Put those two together. All I've done now is I have put in new 6146Bs, this time from my junk box, a Sylvania and an RCA that both tested good, around 70 on the meter on my Precision. I have done nothing. I haven't touched any controls, peaked anything, or reneutralized. Let's hit the transmit button. Uh-oh. We're over 100 watts. So just changing tubes got me up to about 110 watts. Yeah. Let me just try peaking that a little bit. No, it hasn't affected the tuning. We'll check the neutralization later, but I imagine it hasn't upset the neutralization as well. So the tubes I was using are representative, but fresh tubes with more gain, are going to give you more output. Nice to see we're over 100 watts. Well, we've reached the equivalency of, say, the Heathkit 101. You remember the Heathkit 101, Heathkit series that uses 6146s. Typically they were rated at 100 watts and 90 watts on 10 meters. And I think they advertise them as 180 watts PEP. We're kind of in that class now with the FT101. Okay, I got another pair of eBay specials. These are 6146Ws, mismatched set. One of them's a Raytheon, but the Ws are late model. I believe they're early 70s, so they should be the modern 6146 style. They neutralized beautifully, just like the 6146Bs did, so I suspect they are Bs. I'm on 15 meters. Wow, a little over 100 watts out. Yeah, no problem with the 6146Ws. If anything, they're better. Beautiful tubes, and they're showing their stuff in the FT101. Again, we're running the screen high, 240 volts on the screen grids, which is much higher than the original 160 volts, or 200 or 210, 220 volts that most people run them at. Running the 6146 is a little hot on the screen, is allowing the radio to put out that 100 watts you've been looking for. Okay, so here is a pair of 6146As. These appear to be mid-60s A's, maybe a little later. They're Sylvanias. They did not test as high on my tester. They were marked 4835 on a TV7 tester. So first of all, let's just check neutralization. The plug is out. I can already see it's not neutralized because it's much higher than normal. We're on 15 meters. So let me try to neutralize it. Remember, we had a very low value neutralization capacitor to neutralize the 6146 Bs and Ws. Okay, it took more. However, it's still neutralized, and I'm just about at the 1/3 position on the neutralization cap, so no problem neutralizing these 6146As. You know you're not maxed out on your neutralization, by the way, if you get a double dip. If you're only getting a single dip, it's possible that your capacitor is either at maximum or at minimum. But when you have a double dip, you know that you're in the middle of the range somewhere. Watch this. Okay, it's going down, up, and down again. That tells you you're in the middle of the range of the neutralization cap. Anytime you change tubes, you definitely want to check the bias again. 6146As are very stable. I didn't have to adjust the bias. These are 6146As on 15 meters. Excellent. Excellent output. Kind of goosing the current a little bit. But they're over 100 watts output on 15 meters. And like I said, these were testing actually a little bit weaker than the other tubes I've tested. The neutralization required a little bit more turn, a little bit more capacitance than the Bs. This is the 6146As, 1, 2, 1, 2, looking at the AGC, ALC, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 1, 2. Test 1, 2, 6146As, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. Hate to say it, guys, but I think the 6146As are giving the best overall performance. No problem with these A's. Next, we will try the 6146 straights. First, I'll get the data on the A's in the log. So all of the tubes need a little bit of adjustment on the bias control, especially after it was warmed up. And you just want to make sure that's set for 60 milliamps or 3 divisions. These 6146s I just put in the straights. It's way off on those, so that needs to be readjusted right off the bat. So these are acting different right out of the box. And these are the early 6146 straights. Okay. So I got some bias on them now. So let's see what this thing can do. It's all neutralized. Let's get the top back on the cage. So these are the older 6146 straight tubes. They needed more bias. Well, they needed less voltage so that you could get the resting bias up. Okay, that's different. And the neutralization had to be turned a little further, so we're about 11 o'clock. The 6146Bs were just in, just meshing with the neutralization cap. The A's, you had to go a little further, and these straights, you have to go even further. But all of them were within range to neutralize with the 2.2 picofarad fixed capacitor. Okay, this is 15 meters. A little more drive. Even more drive. Even more drive. Okay. Yeah, over 90 watts out with the 6146 old timers on 15 meters. Not bad. So I hope this dispels some of the mythology around 6146 types, especially around the neutralization. I found they were all within range of the neutralization capacitor when the correct capacitor was selected in series. Now, a lot of this has to do with me using the 200 picofarad Brune bypass capacitor. If that capacitor changes, of course, the capacitor that's in series with the neutralization trimmer will also have to change. But I'm not seeing the great big changes in the neutralization that were reported. So I'm going to take data on the 6146 straights, and that will conclude the 6146 testing. So here are the results, and this is just some random tubes. It's by no means exhaustive. And the fact is that a reasonable pair of 6JS6Cs will always beat these numbers by 20 to 30 watts. Sweep tubes are what perform best in this radio because that's what the Japanese engineers set it up for. This is especially true for a non-refurbished or aligned radio. The sweep tubes will win. But with some work, a pair of 6146s can provide plenty of power in this radio. So this concludes my FT101 marathon video series. When I started this journey, I'd never even touched an FT101. I had no idea how to even tune it. Starting at 0 allowed me to explore with less bias, I hope. And always keep your fingers out of that high voltage cage. I want to thank a couple of special people who donated to this series, and the many enthusiastic commenters, and of course my Patreon supporters.